The Christian Science Monitor came out and said, is Obama an imperial president? Is he becoming a dictator? And, of course, that is stating the obvious in the form of a question. And then they go on to say, well, but the Democrats want him to push even more, so that makes it kind of okay. It's what he's got to do. A man's got to do what a man's got to do. And then Senator Ted Cruz went on Face the Nation, and it's the job of the squirrely reporter on there, Emperor Palpatine, that was interviewing Ted Cruz, to act like it's bizarre and weird to criticize Obama, and that it's Ted Cruz who's hurting the economy because he shut the government down for a couple days, trying to have a debate about the fact that we're going to go completely bankrupt. But remember, Obama came out and said, oh, no, raising the debt ceiling does not raise the debt. That's a quote, by the way. And if you have your doctor, you can keep your doctor. But it got worse. You wonder why no one in the controlled media will criticize Obama, that is a dictator for all intents and purposes. On a scale of 1 to 10, he's becoming a 7. And they pretty much always go to a 10 from that point. I think that's what I'm trying to get at here, is the bottom has fallen out. And people are about to find out what dictatorship means. It means special interests that run the government literally can do anything they want, and they will. They will, historically. And stability will go completely out the window. Even if you don't care about morality or liberty or freedom, or you think the general public's dumb and doesn't deserve it, hey, it doesn't matter. Those checks and balances protect everybody. And every time you end up getting a tyranny, stuff gets real nasty real quick. Even for the people that serve the system, they tend to go in and out of favor, like changing styles and fads, and purges become basically like holiday events. So Christian Science Monitor says, is Barack Obama an imperial president? President Obama's use of executive action to get around congressional gridlock is unparalleled in modern times. Some scholars say, no, it's unparalleled. They act like it's some academic thing they're discussing. But the article continues, liberal activists, they're not liberals, they're authoritarians, but members of the authoritarian criminal group taking over, that's what it should say if it was being honest, but members of the criminal group posing as liberals taking over says that the Fuhrer is not doing enough. That should be translated. But is Barack Obama an imperial president? Again, did Hitler have a small mustache under his nose? President Obama's use of executive action to get around congressional gridlock, see how that spins it? Oh, it's getting around the problems, is unparalleled in modern times. Some scholars say, but to liberal activists, he's not going far enough. Should read, President Obama cements the presidency as a dictatorial position. His use of executive actions across the board is completing America's journey into total tyranny. And many of his supporters want him to seize full control and arrest their political enemies. That should be the headline. And, of course, that is now happening with Dinesh D'Souza, Governor McDonald, and others. And I saw sniveling establishment publications making fun of me over the weekend that I dared point out that the stuff that Dinesh D'Souza and others are alleged to have done is the equivalent of having a crooked toenail while the judge sitting over you, Eric Holder, is chopping up children with a meat cleaver. I mean, these people cannot sit in judgment. They are frauds, clearly selectively enforcing, even if they're guilty, which it looks like they're not. They both pled not guilty. And you're going to see more of this. You're going to see a lot more of this. These people are disgusting. Totally disgusting. We're going to come back, just huge amounts of vital news and information, and we're going to play you the censored clip. You wonder why no media will cover the dictatorship situation? Ted Cruz talked about it on Face the Nation, and it got censored, but not before it streamed out on the web. Popping in at the start of the next hour, we have some of the Navy sailors that have been suing over the fact that they are dead and dying from radiation when they helped in the emergency cleanup and stabilization of Fukushima. That just illustrates how serious the situation is. And then we have Mr. O'Keefe joining us from Project Veritas. They are amongst the people being subpoenaed and basically prepared to be indicted, looks like to me, by the gangster that runs New York State, Mr. Cuomo. who said last week gun owners and pro-lifers are, quote, not welcome in New York. We don't have those type of people here. An open tyrant bully saying, you know, we want your tax money, but keep your mouth shut. They only make announcements like that before open persecution. He is a bully thug and must be met head on. Just like Bloomberg is saying it'll be national suicide if we don't have open borders, and that America's immigration is insane. We have the most open borders, get ready for this, in the world, according to every study that's out there. Look it up. It is easier to get into the United States. And look, it wouldn't be an issue if the immigrants came here and weren't organized into socialist brigades to vote for gun control and socialism and total tyranny. And Senator Sessions is pointing out studies in an article today that it drives down wages. No kidding. That's why we've got the working class now on average on food stamps while working 2 jobs. Just where the government wants you. Working 12 hours a day and having to be on food stamps. And your health prices double, tripling, quadrupling, and now you've got to go out and get it. You can't just go to the hospital, the emergency room when you're in an emergency like you could before. I mean, this is incredible. This is the death of this country. And watch, they're probably going to pass the end of the borders. Obama's already doing it with executive action. And just remember, as things get worse and worse, and you're going to look up in 10 years, we're going to look like Mexico City. There's going to be nowhere to run. And the elite are all going to be living off in Switzerland, who has total control over their borders. Just remember what you asked for. Because, you know, Elysium, you know, Matt Damon, I mean, it's mean if you don't let the 50 billion people onto the space station that can hold 100,000. You know, if you don't let 500 people in the lifeboat that holds 20, I mean, we've got to sink the whole boat. We don't want to actually try to build up the third world. No, no, no. Let's keep them in squalor and then export the poverty, the corruption, the tyranny here. And that's what's happening. It's economic weapon of warfare and a cultural weapon. And in a world where people love fads and the surface and feeling like they're winners when they're actually losers, this will be the final blow to the ongoing degradation of this country. I mean, we're not even a nation. We're part of the North American Union with wide open borders. And a president that will legalize by fiat whoever he wants. I mean, that is simply sensational. Hey, maybe I can run to Venezuela. Oh, I'm sorry, Financial Times of London. Venezuela grapples with 56% inflation. Oh, it's great to be under a communist system. Oh, communism doesn't exist. I'm sorry, socialist, even though they say they're communist. That's the kind of news I've got here. But first off, let me just go over some of the news that is obviously coming up. They're moving in Europe to ban cars from entire regions and saying it's under Agenda 21 and a UN treaty. And that is mainstream news from CNBC. Many children unable to be included in parents' Obamacare family plans after they were kicked off. So see, not only does it not cover pre-existing conditions, it kicks you off when you have health care. And of course, less than a third of people in California have actually gotten back on their plans that were kicked off. That was all just more lies, more fake hope by Obama so that no political action can form. These are basic military tactics, folks. When the NDAA in 2011, the National Defense Authorization Act, had the End of Posse Comitatus in it, had open setups for, quote, civilian inmate labor camps. These are real terms. Search them, you'll be on the Army.mil. It's not a game here. And if you looked at the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, there was a lot of opposition to it. So Obama said, hey, don't worry about that. I'm not going to sign it. And he even criticized Senator Dodd, saying, how dare you have these provisions? Dodd got actually mad. Got up and huffed and puffed on the floor, the Senate floor, and I played the clip here, and said, how dare you? Here is the letter from you, Obama, 3 months ago, asking me to keep this confidential. Got to find that clip and play it again. It's so amazing that you actually wrote these provisions. You, a constitutional lawyer, and then you blame me when I have been partisanly loyal, and then you blame me. That's how evil these people are, ladies and gentlemen. And then Obama said, well, I'm still not going to sign it, so it wouldn't have opposition, so it would go to his desk, and he signed it on the last day of 2011 in the evening of December 31st. That's how the Federal Reserve Act 100 years ago got passed as well, 3 senators. This is how they do this stuff in the dead of night. And that's what they do on all these other fronts. Oh, I'm going to get you that free health care. Oh, I'm sorry it kicked you off your plan and doubled your price. I'm going to be a dictator. I'm going to fix that. People are like, all right, be a dictator. Get it done. Yeah, it's those Republicans in the House. They won't let it work right. That's why it happened. They've got a passed bill, folks, fully in Obama's hands. And then this leads me to the big issue before I get into all the other news. This really is a giant mega issue. This is so incredible just to see it all out in the open. Here's the Associated Press. They're just nonchalantly reporting this like it's completely normal and kosher and okay. White House warns Obama could go around Congress on our sovereignty and our borders, bringing in groups that will then be given driver's license to vote. So you guessed it, use the voting, because the Bill of Rights isn't there to protect us anymore. It was the referee to literally enslave everyone. This is the breaking of the public by design. Only a fool in the establishment will want to get rid of checks and balances. Here's another one. Obama to assert unilateral agenda. Isn't that a nice way of saying it? In the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, they've all got the same headlines. This is the Wall Street Journal. Obama to assert unilateral agenda. President to seek to use State of the Union address to shift souring view of leadership. Yeah, con him one more time. Lie to him one more time. The plan's almost in place. Here's Bloomberg. Obama's plan to use executive action triggers criticism. Oh, my gosh, how evil that Mitch McConnell and others would dare criticize the year of action. Boy, does that sound fascist. And here's the Christian Science Monitor. You read this, and the whole article basically, in a smarmy way, endorses it and legitimizes it. And here's the key point we've gotten to. When he starts to act as an open dictator, and there's no real criticism, and Senator Ted Cruz gets censored when he's on Face the Nation, but they still streamed it out live, but then when they aired it, they cut it. It's delayed by an hour, even more on the West Coast. So Cruz was able to get the raw feed. He's smart enough to have his staffers there. He got it, and they cut out where he said Obama's becoming a dictator and abusing power. They don't want anyone talking about the elephant in the room, ladies and gentlemen. So Christian Science Monitor, though, addresses it, but says, oh, big deal. There's some gridlock. Come on. Is Barack Obama an imperial president? Well, of course he is. President Obama's use of executive action to get around congressional gridlock. To get around congressional gridlock, you mean when a few in Congress dare say, hey, we're going bankrupt, maybe we should debate increasing in spending. We're going to totally devalue everything and go down the drain. Shut up, racist. You're criticizing Obama because you're racist, and raising the debt ceiling does not raise the debt. Remember that quote from Obama? I mean, this is upside down world. This is bizarro world. And the article goes on to say, but liberal activists say he's not going far enough. See, now some people say maybe it's a little not friendly that he's a dictator now. But the liberals, and they're the liberals, they have the moral high ground. They're called liberals. You know, if you're in New York and want to own guns or are anti-abortion, just get out of the state. You're not welcome here. That's not authoritarian or anything. Get out of Germany. 1935. Get out and you know, pay us before you leave, too. I mean, these people are authoritarian gangsters. You look at Cuomo. You look at Obama. You look at that witch Hillary. They act like a celebrity on the news to try to sell mindless trendies that, ooh, Hillary's, you know, a wonderful person and all this. I mean, she looks like a baboon's butt or something. I'm nothing against her the way she looks, but this crone-like witch. Let's continue here. Is Barack Obama an imperial president? Zhu Hong's voice rang out loud and clear, interpreting the most powerful man in the world. You have the power to stop deportation of all undocumented immigrants in this country. The young South Korean man yelled as President Obama during a speech on immigration reform last November in San Francisco, waving away security guards. Mr. Obama turned and addressed Mr. Hong himself, undocumented. Actually, I don't, the president said, and that's why we're there. Remember how he kept saying for years, I'm sorry, I can't fix everything. If I was a dictator, I could. Remember that? And then now it's like, oh, they begged me. Yeah, let's make all the illegals legal. That won't double and triple the amount that come. I'm going to explain how this works. That will then vote, because they're directed by the Democratic Party and the Republican leadership, to take everything everybody's got, except for the bankers like Warren Buffett, who are exempt. None of this would be happening if the globalists weren't exempt from all this. Going, well, the president's going to act alone on the military. He's going to act alone on Obamacare. He's going to act alone on guns. He's going to act alone on immigration. He's going to act alone with recess appointments that clearly haven't gone through the process. He's going to take a third of his money from foreign donors, each one of them a felony, while at the same time arresting Dinesh D'Souza, even if he's guilty, and he's pled not guilty, for doing something literally 1/10,000th. Obama has raised hundreds of millions illegally, openly, on record, and not gotten in trouble. And then Dinesh D'Souza gives $20,000 to a good friend running for the Senate and does it through bundling, something Democrats do openly. I mean, the Project Veritas has endless videos. Endless videos. And he's coming on in the third hour today with new ones, with the Blue State Project that's trying to turn Texas into a socialist stronghold. And they get in there in these meetings and openly talk about crimes they're committing, and election fraud, and getting illegals to vote, and getting government payoffs, and no one gets in trouble. No one gets in trouble. And then they go out and they selectively enforce. And then Ted Cruz, the senator, goes on Face the Nation, and the job of the Face the Nation host, Bob Schaefer, is to sit there and, like a con artist, laugh and act like Cruz is ridiculous and that he, Schaefer, has the moral authority when he's saying outrageous things like, how dare you say we shouldn't raise the debt again? Raising the debt doesn't raise the debt. Ha ha, you're the bad one that said Obamacare was a bad deal. Ha ha, boy, are you discredited. This is the tactic. Oh, look at Ted Cruz. Ha 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 ha. Look at Muhammad Ali and the Thriller in Manila when he won. He's discredited. He won. It'd be like whoever wins the Super Bowl coming up, saying, oh, they're discredited. They won the Super Bowl. Everything he said about it was true. I'm Bob Schaefer. I mean, they play these games where these mental midgets, because you got the general public doesn't even watch the news, doesn't even know what planet they're on, literally. Has no idea up from down, just believes everything they're told. Brain damaged, watching television all day, drooling, acting trendy. Then you've got the kind of news outlet type people that think they're news hounds and think they know how things work. Democrat types, they watch Face the Nation and sit there in their couches laughing with Bob Schaefer and actually, ha-ha, he said Obamacare was bad, keeping the whole con going when we all know Obamacare is wonderful. Well, the story is up on Infowars.com. Very important. I had the guys post the Newsbusters video. It's also up on DrudgeReport.com. CBS caught censoring Ted Cruz over Obama's abuse of power. And the actual Newsbusters headline is, Face the Nation edits out Senator Cruz condemning Obama's abuse of power. And you can see both the edited clip, the unedited clip. They streamed the real clip, but then aired later the edited one and edited this out because no one's allowed to talk about how Obama is basically becoming a dictator. Here it is. It is an insane establishment. That's what tyranny is you get a bunch of megalomaniacs in control, and they just loot and wreck everything. Even a smart, corrupt establishment would want a big, wealthy system and skim off the top, because the skim off of a healthy, somewhat free system is hundreds of times thicker than all the cream that is in a tyranny. But they don't care. They want the full control, and they will wreck everything to get it. And they hate anyone who is not controlled by them. I mean, I start thinking about the lies Obama gets away with, and then you wonder why he's able to do that. It's because no one in the dinosaur media will report on the fact that he's acting as a dictator. Or if they do, they say, well, there's been some gridlock and the president's acting unilaterally, but he's not doing enough, giving them cover. And that's what they're there for, to create a false reality to insert us into. A three-dimensional fraud where they laugh at Ted Cruz during the full interview. I was watching it this morning and say, you're the guy that criticized Obamacare. You're the guy that, tried to shut down the government. Tried to shut down the government? They simply said, we've got to make some cuts across the board, defense, you name it. As Senator Paul said, or this country's going under. In fact, it's already too late. And I think that's the attitude of the establishment who's directed us to this point, is just go all the way. And they're going to act as the saviors, again, while all of this implodes. And I'm not trying to be negative here. This is just the facts. And the more we can discuss the facts, the better. But I want to play the censored Ted Cruz comments again, because it's only a minute and a half long. This was censored by CBS, but they did stream it as the interview happened on the web, but aired it on television later, an hour later, edited. And then hours after that on the West Coast, edited more. And I've seen this many times where I'll go on some national show live and it airs on the East Coast and the Midwest, Central, and then it doesn't air, or I'm cut out by the time it hits the West Coast. And that's why the West Coast is in its own world of Justin Bieber and La La Land. But here is the censored clip that says it all.
Well, look, my focus is on the challenges facing this country right now. It's on the Senate. My focus, for example, is on the abuse of power from the president. Let's take something like the IRS scandal.
So do I take that as a yes or a no? Or still thinking about it?
What you can take that as is that my focus is standing and fighting right now in the Senate to bring back jobs and economic growth. Economic growth is my #1 priority. And let me tell you something that deeply concerns me. It's the abuse of power from this administration. We've seen multiple filmmakers prosecuted, and the government's gone after them, whether it was the poor fellow that did the film that the president blamed Benghazi and the terrorist attack on. Turned out that wasn't the reason for the attack, but the administration went and put that poor fellow in jail on unrelated charges. Or just this week, it's been broken that Dinesh D'Souza, who did a very big movie criticizing the president, is now being prosecuted by this administration.
Senator.
Bob, can you imagine the reaction if the Bush administration had gone and prosecuted Michael Moore and Alec Baldwin and Sean Penn?
Senator.
It should trouble everyone that this administration uses government power, and the IRS in particular, to target their enemies. And you're talking in a few minutes to Chuck Schumer.
We're going to leave this for another day, Senator. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again. We'll be back in a minute.
Thank you, Bob.
There's no doubt. I love how he just talks over him. Of course, so what did Schaefer do? He just edited it out for broadcast. It doesn't matter, Schaefer, your dwindling audience is like your dwindling life force. So I hope your sellout to the establishment has been worth it, because you will always be on the side of the traitors. And the big issue here is that I told former Congressman Bob Barr, who's set to get back into Congress, last Thursday, 6 hours before the Dinesh D'Souza news broke, I said, I think they're going to start purging people and using this Justice Department to do it. I mean, why not? They've gotten away with everything. Obama is now saying he's a dictator, basically. I mean, what do you think the next step is, folks? This goes in progression, so we know the next level. And the establishment is getting all this ready because they are preparing to absolutely implode the currency, start huge wars, you name it. There are times in histories where all Hades breaks loose. And across the board, historians, political scientists are saying this is one of those times. But everyone's so scared that they're creeping around, just like with Hitler or Lenin or Stalin or Mao, and not opposing these people up front. And they're going to take over, and they're going to take your bank accounts, and they're going to take your pension funds, and they're going to make wealthy people be folks that make the equivalent of $20,000 a year. You're going to be poor when they're done with you. That's the plan. And it's very, very frustrating. I want to play the trailer for Dinesh D'Souza's America that they've emergency released. You know, I ended up releasing the Obama deception a week early because the FBI showed up here asking about it. And I said, what is this in relation to? Well, we're just asking about it. And, I mean, that shows you how they're scared of resistance. They're scared of Ted Cruz going on TV and saying, why did you arrest for a year on trumped-up charges the guy that made the Muhammad film to try to blame him for Benghazi? And nothing to do with it. Why have you arrested Dinesh D'Souza? I mean, here's the deal. Let's say Dinesh D'Souza went out and got 5 friends to give, you know, the maximum couple $1,000s or whatever. And then he gave his maximum amount. The max in there was like 5,000. Used to be 3,000. And it turns out they've been investigating him for a year. And everybody should be, wow, this looks like a witch hunt. We need to investigate this. This, you know, there's a lot bigger fish to fry. There's maxims in law, folks, that if you have a corrupt attorney general with Solyndra and all the other scams and Fast and Furious and Benghazi and the list goes on, and the NSA and all the incredible campaign finance fraud, the likes of which the world's never seen. Obama, I guess, can pardon himself later or pardon others when he leaves office, but the Justice Department will not investigate him. The Republican blue blood leadership is part of the same traitor group. And so they're not going to go after Obama when he leaves. They'll fight a rearguard action for him. But you look at 1/3 of Obama's money coming from foreign donors openly and him funding foreign fundraisers with foreigners, giving checks and putting bags of cash in buckets on TV. They don't even hide it. And then Dinesh D'Souza, one of his best friends he went to college with and edited a newspaper with at college, he gives her $20,000. And, I mean, on its face, if Michael Moore, who I don't like, would have been indicted, and by the way, he gives money to the Democrats, so that should be looked at. Not to indict him, but just to, I guarantee you there's bundling going on with him as well. And the guy's got 6 armed bodyguards. He doesn't want you to own guns. I mean, he's a hypocrite. He's not a liberal, folks. He's a gangster who wants his slaves disarmed. He's a fellow traveler. These guys sit around as gangsters. I've been around them. I know folks that are around them. I've been at the highest levels of corporate meetings, Hollywood meetings that I've fallen into over the years, all part of my quest. I always just fall into this stuff and get a chance to see things other people haven't seen. They're gangsters. They're not liberals. They're not conservatives. They're thug crooks. Michael Moore is a crook. He wants organized government to take my guns. He wants to disarm me. That's criminal robbery of my rights. You know, he came out, he had all those stocks in Halliburton and defense companies, and he knew it while he's criticizing the wars. He's a complete hypocrite. What, you don't think I didn't know how to make money in prison stocks 10 years ago or any of these stocks? We've had guests on telling you what stocks are good to be a part of. I won't be part of it because I don't want that bad mojo, as the Japanese would call it, hara. The point is, I don't want to consciously do bad things. I do enough bad stuff without unconsciously. But we've got Michael Moore and all the rest of these people getting away with bloody murder. And can you imagine if Bush's Justice Department had arrested him and then arrested a Republican governor and then been going after O'Keefe? O'Keefe of the Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, that's joining us. He's now getting subpoenaed, and the U.S. attorney, also the state attorney, he's got quotes on his site, are just saying incredibly mean things about him, openly prejudicing themselves. I mean, they don't care. They want everybody to know they're gangsters with 3-piece suits with government helicopters. They're the mafia with helicopters and SWAT teams. It's not a pretty picture. There's only one thing the mafia recognizes, and that's getting punched right back in the nose. There are a lot of good people living in New York State, but, I mean, that was pure gangster last week when he said, you're not welcome here, you need to leave if you're pro-life or pro-gun. That was the quote. There's no room for you in this state, he concluded. New Yorkers aren't like that. See, he defines, that's his tolerance. That's his liberalness, is to say, you'll do whatever I say. And they'll go on MSNBC and say, your kids belong to the state. And they'll go on CNN and say, we're going to do forced inoculations. And they'll go on the CNN and say, Obama's a dictator, it's good for you. And then those of us that warned about this, oh, we're the kooks. Look, Alex said they'd have bullets, billions of bullets and drones and checkpoints, and it's all happening. He's discredited. And they're literally just there to make it look like con artists, that everything's fine with the general public. That everything's okay. It's all business as usual. I'm going to tell the Republican leadership something right now, and you're not stupid. And I know you're all blackmailed and intimidated, but you're obviously the party that's going to be phased out. I want to explain something to you. You cannot make a deal with the New World Order. They are going to root all of you guys out, and I guarantee you, if they fully take over, you're going to be exiled or put in prison or killed. And people like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, who I know well, and many others behind the scenes and on the air, care about their grandchildren, care about their children, and realize you cannot make a deal with El Diablo. You cannot make a deal with it. And it's just mind-blowing. I mean, I've got the news here that we're going to cover. A ban on automobiles. Major cities consider going carless. CNBC under UN regulations. I told you that's the plan. And they're going to put taxes on travel that are so cost prohibitive that no one but people worth tens of millions of dollars are going to be able to travel. This is total feudalism where you'll never leave your village and where your village is globally run. I mean, this is serfdom. This is slavery. Let's pull up the definition of serfdom if we can. Indentured serfdom, where you never left your land and you were controlled via debt. And that's what the globalists said they wanted at Club of Rome in the 60s and CFR documents in the 80s. And you read all this, and they're doing everything they said they'd do. Our whole destiny, our whole society hijacked. We're going to go to break and come back with the Dinesh D'Souza trailer. You know, I've gotten so busy that and so obsessed with Obama Deception 2. It really is a great film that I basically a few months ago just paused working on it. But I really need to get that out as an act of resistance. And, I mean, I was trying to come up with a sub-name, Obama Deception, something about stopping the dictator, stopping the rise of the dictator, or America's Last Chance. I mean, that's what the film's about, predicting he would do all this. And now I've got to go back and change it because it's all happened. It's happening faster than I can put it out. That's the problem. And it's just so painful. And that's why even if big national libertarian and Republican hosts attack me out of professional jealousy, I am not going to respond. And actually, a lot of them have stopped attacking me since I don't respond back. They actually said some good things, and that's a good thing. Because, folks, if we don't hang together, listen, if somebody arrests Michael Savage, which he hadn't said bad things about me, he said nice things, but I would support him, even though I only agree with about 95% of what he says. Very honorable, very smart guy. If they try to set up Glenn Beck or come after him, I would stand for him. Or Matt Drudge or WorldNet Daily or any of these groups or individuals. I mean, it's basic common sense. We hang together or we hang separate. And it is true that the Republicans have been controlled at the top, but their ideology, at least on paper, the Republican Party platform of Texas sounds like it was written by the John Birch Society, because it basically was. We have the answers to turn this around. That's why they're scared of Ted Cruz. That's why they want to censor him. That's why they want to censor me. That's why they assassinate my character. But I just say to all the people that work for the system and the rest of you, come on, you really don't want this to happen. You don't want to be delusional and imagine that you're part of the power structure and everything's going to be okay. And if you just laugh at us, everything will turn out and you'll be with the power structure. That's not how this works. You should be gravely concerned, just by the depressionary factors we're seeing happen. We better all come together around due process and call for the charges to be dropped on Dinesh D'Souza. Hands down. You cannot have this corrupt Justice Department that is the dirtiest in U.S. history, undoubtedly, prosecuting their political enemies, trying to stop D'Souza's movie in the middle of shooting coming out July 4th. Now, let me announce to everybody just briefly here that I get so busy, I skip network breaks. I don't plug the products. That's how we fund ourselves. If you want to stand with us and buy your war bonds in the battle for the Republic, in this information war, you need to go to InfoWarsStore.com and get the Pro Pure. They now have the Pro 2, Pro 1 filters that cut out all the glyphosates, the fluoride, you name it. The best filters out there, bar none. We have the widest selection. Promo code WATER to save 10% off the already lowest price. InfoWarsLife.com to stock up on the fluoride shield with the nascent iodine and 5 other key ingredients to supercharge detoxifying the body. The other Super Male Vitality, just try it and you'll be amazed. And I've certainly been amazed. And, of course, the bestseller Survival Shield, the pure nascent iodine, unlike any other on the market. This is how we fund our operations, selling you high-quality products that we believe in and that we personally use. InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. And your support is what allows the InfoWar to take place. 11 people can log in simultaneously. Please share your username and passcode with friends and family, or please give gift subscriptions to friends and family. That's how you support the broadcast and spread the InfoWar. PrisonPlanet.tv. Here's some of the headlines up on Infowars.com. CFR calls on Obama to befriend al-Qaeda terrorist group. This is just the mainlining of what's already been going on. CBS caught censoring Cruz's comments on Obama's abuse of power. Already covered that, but it's so important. Here's a huge story I'm going to cover after our guest leaves at the bottom of the next hour. Soros activists take over Ukrainian government buildings. They're going to do it here, too. China crash transfers hoax. Plays into bank run fears. Is the major gold scandal going mainstream? The answer is yes. The artificial suppression of gold prices over the last 2 years. And boy, when they finally stop suppressing it, I think it's going to go above 3,000. Silver back above 50. That is just some of the news. But let's go out to break with Dinesh D'Souza, now a political prisoner, trying to stop the production of his film, America, coming out July 4th, to try to bring immigrants together to love liberty and the Bill of Rights, not the race pimping of the Ku Klux Klan Democratic Party. Here it is.
Best spokesman.
All right, we're going to go to break.
I'm
going to play the rest of it when we come back in the next segment. But the key here, I'll break down the key to this on the other side. Stay with us. So we were just playing the trailer for the political prisoner, Dinesh D'Souza, his film America coming out. And look, the reason they hype that America's evil and everything is bad is so that the socialists run by foreign banks who are actually conquering the world, running giant slave camps worldwide, Foxconn slave factories, they just want to point at some evils of the past to then project it onto everyone who's alive today to give them the moral high ground. And I don't know what D'Souza's going to do in his film. Funny enough, I actually tackle all of this in Obama Deception 2 with the Obama phone lady, everybody. But this really is the ideology. This really is the mindset. This really is how these people operate. And it's extremely, extremely frustrating that the globalists are carrying out all these crimes worldwide, funding al-Qaeda to murder Christians all over Africa, all over the Middle East. Again, Al Gore on the board of Apple with the Foxconn, worst factories in the world, suicide nets, forced abortions, forced drugging. But it's like, oh, but they have the moral high ground because they stand for the Native Americans. Well, I happen to be Native American, in fact, quite a bit on my dad's side. Comanche, Cherokee, you name it. I mean, my dad didn't go when he was a little kid to the tourist trap deals where you go see the the natives doing their rituals and stuff. I mean, he went to the real deals and danced around the campfires and stuff. The whole point is that I happen to know what happened with the natives. I happen to know the whole history of the battles back and forth. And that Hollywood always portrayed Western activities in Arizona and places. The real battles were in the East and the Midwest. And it was all just tribalism. And I know that American ideas, though never fully realized, are a threat to the globalist. Due process, private property, the family. They want you to be in a Democratic Party Ku Klux Klan gang. The Democratic Party by the 60s, Eisenhower destroyed them with the Civil Rights Act, the party of Lincoln. This is a fact. Martin Luther King was a Republican. On record. No one knows that. That's how dumb the public is. It's a total hoax. The Grand Dragon, you know, Congressman Byrd and Senator Byrd, all of them. LBJ famously quotes saying, you know, I got to do something to keep control of these N-words. You know, we're going to get welfare on them and run their lives. We're going to put them in a prison. You know, I'm not about to have those N-words voting Republican. The Democrats flipped over in the 60s, in the mid-60s. And I'm not even a Republican because they've sold out and are bad as well. But, I mean, the public is so ignorant. I'm sick of it. They say the NRA is the Klan now, when the NRA was founded to help black people. That's how butt backwards everything is. And we're here to expose the hoax. Here's the rest of his trailer. Here it is. And I know where the film's going to go. It's just going to say we're not perfect, but we've been better than others. And they're trying to replace some of the old tyrannies with new high-tech ones. And, I mean, who can deny we're being conquered by the globalists? They're the new empire. And they want us all fighting about wars of 100, 200 years ago. And again, the public doesn't even know that Martin Luther King was a Republican, that Eisenhower got the Civil Rights Act passed with the Republicans with Democrats trying to block it, that Republicans sent troops in to integrate the schools. You've got the party, the Ku Klux Klan, race baiting, race division, politics, ruining this country by design. And they're about to bring in 30 million illegals to vote to take our guns. And they're going to do it. Operation Tomodachi. Literally translated from Japanese into English, Operation Friends, was an effort by U.S. Armed Forces to provide humanitarian assistance by supporting Japan in disaster relief beginning on March 12, 2011. It involved 24,000 U.S. service members, 189 aircraft, 24 naval ships, and an estimated $90 million. You didn't see other governments coming to the aid like the U.S., excluding the $4.3 billion costs incurred by the construction of the USS Ronald Reagan that's now been radiated. And here's the headline. You've got to go to RT to even know about this. It's up on Infowars.com. U.S. Navy sailors sue Japan for lying about Fukushima radiation. And it has now come out that they were testing them, and as the levels went up, they stopped the testing. And, of course, this has come out in the Japanese news that they lied to the whole world and would just said that detectors weren't working in Fukushima prefecture or that state and surrounding areas. And now they've been doing the same thing here in the United States with increased radiation levels. We sent our reporters out for a week on the West Coast, finding as high as 14 times and 10 times and 7 times and 9 times, all up and down the southern, central, and northern coast of California and Oregon. That is big news. And the news admitted we were right, but said, you know, it was still a conspiracy theory to think it was bad. So the radiation's up, but they're not going to discuss why. And a lot of it's toxic waste dumping over the years. The Navy did, and it's Fukushima. In fact, will you guys print me this? It was a study out, marine biologists last week, that the seals are dying on the West Coast in Alaska from the radiation. And they've been testing them because it bioaccumulates the fish they eat. It builds up. This is a very, very serious situation. Here it is. University of Alaska scientists, Fukushima radiation may be making Alaskan seals sick with huge bloody rot holes in them and radiation sickness evidence. So we're like seals, folks. Things bioaccumulate in us. We're at the top of the food chain. And we're joined until the bottom of the hour by attorney Paul Garner and Lieutenant Steve Simmons, who was out on one of those ships that gave aid when everybody else ran. And so they can also break down what he saw, what unfolded. But this is a big deal because just like the deadly dust on 9/11, which we know they knew about, they lied and said it was safe to breathe. I know a lot of firefighters and police I've spoken with in New York at benefits for who are now dead. And it took them 9 years to finally get some coverage, medical coverage. This is how evil the government is. The New York Post called them ambulance chasers. I mean, I've been there when the cops and firemen are literally coughing blood up and are on oxygen machines and can't even go on stage turning blue. And then they die. And they're, oh, well, we only say cops and firemen are heroes when the government wants to use them for some event, or Navy sailors or Marines or Army. But when it comes to actually backing them up, we call them ambulance chasers. So we're joined by Paul Garner, the attorney, and Lieutenant Steve Simmons from the Navy. Gentlemen, you've got the floor. Tell us what you witnessed when you were there, Lieutenant Simmons, and what's unfolded now and what's happened to the 71, at least 71 sailors, many of them in their 20s, reporting radiation sickness, filing suit against Tokyo Electric. Tell us what's going on.
Well, first, thank you for having me on the show. You know, it's tragic, actually, of what's been going on with everybody who's now suffering.
Is this Steve? Is this Steve or is this Paul?
This is Steve.
Okay, so this is the Navy man. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Paul, this is Paul, and I'm sorry to interrupt Steve and your question, but I just want to say to you, Alex Jones, that you are a true Tomodachi to our first responders and all 70,000 participants in Operation Tomodachi. Thank you for bringing awareness to this situation to your listeners. I hope it stays on the front burner. Go on, Steve. I just want to add something. I listened to what you said before. You might want to check out a paper that was written almost a year ago, came out of Honolulu, Hawaii, University of Hawaii, Evaluation of Radiation Doses and Associated Risk from the Fukushima Nuclear Accident to Marine Biota and Human Consumers of Seafood. And this is by Nicholas Fisher, Browleen Seiler. I'll send you the link, but this is of grave concern and should be to every inhabitant.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's why we've got you on, and I'm no hero doing this. You're just doing your duty as well. If they don't care about sailors, Counselor, they don't care about anybody. I mean, we've got to start worrying about these reactors.
Yeah, and Alex, for God's sakes, send the ambulance at least, and we'll chase after the ambulance, you know what I mean? But they didn't even send the ambulance to help these poor people, these victims, and instead, the DOD just canceled the Tomodachi registry. It'll be a year this February 1st that they decided to throw in the towel on that, claiming that it's all low dose, and I'll speak with you further about that later, but I really want you to hear from Steve, okay?
Absolutely. Tell us what you witnessed, what you did in the operation trying to help the Japanese.
Well, you know, everybody's job was different as far as who did what, who worked where. You know, my position while I was out there, I was actually an administrative officer for the air wing, the carrier air wing that was embarked on the Reagan for that particular deployment. So it was a scheduled deployment. We were already out on deployment, and we were actually heading to participate in an exercise, and we actually got diverted from the exercise, got diverted up north to go participate and, of course, help out the citizens of Japan following that 9.0 earthquake and tsunami that ravaged their shore. So
you were there super early. How long after Fukushima reactors blew up a few days into it were you on site?
The earthquake and tsunami hit if I remember correctly, on the 11th of March, and if I remember right, we arrived on the 12th of March.
Wow, and because the reactors didn't go right away. That is simply amazing.
It went 5 hours. Forgive me for interrupting, but former Prime Minister Naoto Kan revealed to the Japanese Foreign Press Corps that the meltdown of reactor number 1 occurred 5 hours after the earthquake. He measured it from the earthquake at 2:46 p.m. local time.
Yes.
And the tsunami happened about 45 minutes later. But they knew that they were in a loca. They knew that they had loss of coolant. They knew that they were heading to a meltdown, and they had a meltdown 5 hours later before these first responders showed on the scene.
And then it kept going on for days, and then the big Mach 3 blew up. That was the one that shot the mushroom cloud in the air so far. Amazing.
Yeah, and they were cooked for 5 hours in what is claimed by those in charge as being low dose, and you can get as much by eating a banana or from just taking a plane ride or something.
That's right. Tell us the long and short of it. I mean, you guys, these sailors, everybody tried to help with Fukushima. You got radiated, and the big crux here, as I was reading the news, is that then your radiation levels were going up, so they stopped testing you. Tell folks what happened.
Well, the story that they've been peddling, or that's been peddled for the past 3 years, is that there is no threat to the radiation levels that anybody was exposed to, and that you can actually get more radiation exposure from 1 month's worth of rock, sun, and soil, or a transcontinental flight. So that now today, it doesn't sit well. I can say, at least for me, it doesn't sit well. It's not that easy to push that "I believe" button because of some of the measures that were taken while the ship was out there.
Sure. I mean, well, they admit this is much worse than Chernobyl, and it's ongoing. So what did you do in the mission? How close did you get? And then when did you guys start to feel sick?
Well, we were, if I remember correctly, I wasn't, my job, I'm not a navigator or anything like that. All I can go is, what we were told. So at one point we were within pretty close proximity to the plant, and as Paul mentioned, sitting for 5 hours, we actually sailed into the nuclear plume and was in the plume for a little over 5 hours. And then on a subsequent time, we actually had to secure the water system because we actually sucked up the contaminants into the water system of the ship. And everybody who knows something about the ship, that's how we get our drinkable water, our potable water. So everything we use, from showers, water faucets, soda machines, water for cooking, it's all coming from seawater. And
what is the point in your missions of sailing through the plume?
That's a very valid question. That's definitely a question that I don't have an answer to. I'm not... Sure. And
so you guys are saying you've got radiation sickness. When did you start to see the symptoms?
Well, it was November of 2011 after I had returned. Apparently I was having some issues on the ship, and I really didn't think much about it as far as GI-type issues, and I didn't really think anything about it. November of 2011, I started feeling ill, at which time I was actually driving into Arlington, heading to work. I was driving down Route 50, and I actually blacked out and drove my truck up on a curb. So after that, it was back and forth to the doctor, test after test, couldn't figure anything out. Started running fevers. I was running fevers for 3 months solid, as high as 102.9. In and out of the hospital 3 different times for admittance into the hospital. Lymph nodes start swelling, dealing with severe night sweats, lost 20 to 25 pounds completely unexpectedly, wiping hair off my body as I showered. And then during the second hospitalization, I was actually standing up and my legs just buckled. And then from there it started dealing with muscle weakness, progressing up. And now it's taken a point where it now affects the signals between the brain and the bladder, and I have to catheterize every 4 hours now.
Good Lord. Classic radiation.
Wheelchair dependent.
Classic radiation sickness symptoms. And, of course, Japanese children are dropping dead everywhere. People are having heart failure. Their teeth are falling out. Same type stuff you've been going through with the bleeding and the not having control of the bladder. And, of course, the response is that nothing's going on, correct?
As of right now, there's been no doctors able to, well, I don't want to say able to, but at least willing to make the connection. In fact, I've actually had, the first time I was hospitalized, I actually brought it up to the intern. And the intern's response to me was, well, if this was radiation, you would have seen symptoms long before this. My response back to him was, I'm no doctor, but you need to go back to med school because you're an idiot.
Well, let's talk to your lawyer, Paul Garner, real quick. I do see that Congress, the Navy Times is reporting, is investigating sailors' exposure to Fukushima radiation. But, I mean, my whole point is anybody in the military, or the police for that matter, should understand that when stuff melts down, out of hand, almost every time, they deny people were exposed, just like the nerve gas in the first Gulf War. 24,000 chemical detectors went off, and they still just said, no, nothing happened, even though it killed large numbers of people years later. and has been and has now been confirmed. Talking to your attorney, Paul Garner, why do you think they have this attitude? I mean, clearly your client and others on the ship and ships are showing classic forms of radiation sickness. What's been the train of events the last 3 years?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
They control the ball game. They control the media. They control the misinformation that's disseminated from day one, from Fukushima Gate. If you were at the nuclear power plant on day one, March 11th, 2011, and you were in charge of the power plants and having to deal with the meltdown of reactor number 1, number 2, number 3, and the potential to have to say, hey, we have to walk away from this because you'll have to evacuate Tokyo, Japan. So here's the dynamic. The guy who was in charge is now dead from cancer, their own guy. So I don't care what Nuke Abe, their present prime minister, may be pushing to the world. No one has gotten sick from Fukushima, and no one ever will. Well, just take a look at the guy who was in charge of, your TEPCO, your Tokyo Electric Power Company. You're a big shareholder. You're number one shareholder in it now. The guy's dead from cancer. Hello? So they're in control, Alex. They don't have... we don't have InfoWars at our disposal on mass media. If mass media paid attention to this like I did after it first happened and stayed on it like they should have, but they're captured. They're all captured by the nuclear industry from the top down, from your commander-in-chief right on through to the head of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It's all money-making.
That's right.
charade.
That's right. Their propaganda is so good. Of course, the Ronald Reagan's nuclear-powered, last time I checked. And, I've always been a pro-nuclear power guy because, I believe we need energy. The problem is none of them work these things right. They build them on fault lines. When they blow up, they don't even seem to care. They're not even trying to fix it. There's just this attitude that they're in control of the BS machine so they can lie to themselves and everybody else, but they're not in control of the reactors. The laws of physics will not respond to TEPCO's bull. So where is the lawsuit going, and how do we support you guys?
Okay, here's where it's going. We're refiling before February 6th is the deadline that Judge Janice Sammartino afforded us to file our second amended complaint in federal court in San Diego. We had 51 victims. We expect to double that figure of record. And we've been contacted by probably 250,000, 250. 250 victims, but there were, as you mentioned at the top of the program, thousands involved in this. Now, there's a latency period, as we know, but we have filed on behalf of all John and Jane Does who participated in Operation Tomodachi to preserve their rights so that they can file a claim in the future when something arises. With Steve, we know what's happened. With several others, unfortunately, it's the same scenario or beyond. Constantly bleeding from your butt or from gynecologically, and you're a young person, and not at 21 you lose one of your testicles. So we're going to push this forward. As you mentioned, Congress is going to get a report back from the Undersecretary of State in charge of this by April 15th, but we're not waiting for them because where have they been?
And by the way, folks, for those that don't know, radiation attacks fast-growing cells. So your gums, your intestinal lining, and sailors across the board that were part of the operation have been reporting bleeding from their rear ends. So just understand, this is not a game. That means you've got serious radiation sickness. And what makes me mad is they didn't tell people take iodine from what I read. Perhaps the sailor can correct me. But why not tell them to take iodine? Why not tell them now that there's things like Prussian blue and things that could help strip this out of your body, or chelation? I mean, why were you told any of this, Lieutenant Simmons?
They don't want to admit that there's a problem. It's denial. It's denial.
No, it's like telling the first responders, don't wear respirators, the air is fine on World Trade Center. I mean, it's beyond just not caring and covering up. They actively don't want you to get any aid or protect yourself. That'd be saying, go down 1,000 feet in the water. You don't need a mask or a tank. You don't need air down there. I mean, it's just... Go back to that briefly. So they never told you to protect yourself from radiation.
You had a wonderful...
Well, they also...
The biggest
thing
I'm sorry, Steve. I just want to say this to Alex. Glenn Troltz, your guy who you had on the other day, Glenn Troltz, who got measured for cesium. He's got cesium in his body. How much cesium do you think Steve Simmons has in his body?
Well, you must be a listener. Yeah, we had one of our crew on who had his blood tested because he moved from California because he was sick. He had very high levels of cesium that they said was from Fukushima in the major medical report from a major medical lab in Chicago where his blood was sent. And exactly, we need to get the test of your whole crew. It's just amazing. So to be clear, Lieutenant Steve Simmons, who was on the Ronald Reagan aiding through the plume right there at Fukushima, you guys you were miles away and responded when the tsunami hit and then came in. Tell us about, I was reading that you guys were told that there was increased radiation, but then when it started going up and up and up, they said don't worry about it and stop testing?
Honestly, that's new information to me. That is not information that I was purview to, I should say.
Sure. What about iodine? Did they tell you to take potassium iodine?
The only individuals that were taking the potassium iodine were those directly involved with flight ops, those going ashore, and potentially some of those that were working on the deck, but that was it. The rest of the crew, nothing. So you're talking a crew of about 5,500 people, and a small amount of them were working on the deck or actually going ashore.
And by the way, you're living in and around a nuclear reactor on the ship, because that's a nuclear-powered carrier, right?
Correct.
Okay, so did they not have enough potassium iodate or iodine for you, or what happened?
I'm quite sure they had plenty. However, they're going off of misinformation being fed to them from Japan and from Tokyo Electric. So when Tokyo Electric and Japan gives the false sense of security that everything is fine and you guys are safe to operate in such...
The military bought that. Yeah, stay there. I want to do 5 more minutes with you guys and have some closing comments, but talk about what did Fukushima look like blowing up? What was it like? Did you see the tsunami come in before? I mean, what was it like? You're an eyewitness to so much of this. It's amazing. Lieutenant Steve Simmons and his lawyer are with us. So I'm not the smartest guy around, but I have a large general knowledge. Like some good old boy next door who's an expert on baseball, and he can tell you everything about every baseball made in the last 100 years. People can get really informed on certain subjects, like the law. Spend decades studying it, you get smarter than the average bear when it comes to the law. But I know this. We have a lot of nuclear and atomic disasters going on. Radiation is really, really bad news. We've got a bunch of aging 35, 40-year-old reactors that are supposed to be shut down. And I feel pretty stupid that, if you go back 15 years ago, I was pro-nuclear power on air. Because if they actually ran them correctly and actually warned people when there were occasional problems, you could argue if we ran out of fossil fuels, what are we going to do? Freeze to death in the winter? It's a very powerful form of energy. The problem is that, look, if there's a disaster, and I've interviewed Don Darling, the head of Veterans for Peace here in town, himself a famous Navy captain and was a captain of submarines, nuclear rescue teams, you name it, nuclear submarines. And he's radiated. He's had all this happen to him. I haven't talked to Don in years. We ought to get a hold of him and see how he's doing. So he was real sick when I talked to him on air a few years ago. And they ordered them to turn a reactor off and turn it on. They said, well, and they were all engineers. He was an engineer. And they said, we're not supposed to do that. It's going to radiate us. And they said, that's an order, Captain. So they turned it off and then turned it back on and released a bunch of radiation, just literally to test it on the submarine. And Don's told that story on air before. So it's this attitude of the bosses up on top that see sailors and Marines and Army people as animals. And the giant history of secret testing. I remember being a child watching some documentary film. I forget what it was. It was at the movie theater with my dad, and it was about atomic soldiers, or part of it was. And it showed them having the soldiers sit back a mile away from an atomic blast and then march into the glowing crater. And it was a death sentence for them. It took them decades to die, but it killed them. A lot of them had their teeth and stuff fall out, right away, and blood come out of their orifices, and had deformed kids and the rest of it. And I said, Dad, why is that? He said, I asked people when I was working at MD Anderson why they did, not at MD Anderson, but so many other places the government did that. And he said, because humans are cheaper than monkeys. He said, why don't we just use monkeys? And they said, well, humans are cheaper than monkeys. So that's the attitude. And look, I don't want to do testing on monkeys either. I have empathy. What you'll do to a little animal, you do to somebody else. But it's like everybody cares about the animals, but not the people. And it's just another story. Oh, the sailors got radiated and they're bleeding out their hind ends, and their teeth are falling out and their hair is falling out. And yeah, there's 14-fold radiation increase in San Francisco on the beach. I mean, big deal. Let's not even investigate that. And there's this attitude that you've got like 3 heads or something if you care. So I care about this because it shows the mindset of the establishment. It shows that the sky's the limit more and more, and they've got these pilots, people on the flight deck. I mean, this is coming out in the news, and no one will give them treatment. No one will pay for it. At least the New York Post, who I was critical of earlier, they reported on this. Guys, closing comments, Attorney Paul Garner and Lieutenant Steve Simmons. I mean, how's your radiation sickness now? Has it gotten better or worse? You got to catheterize yourself. What's happening to your buddies? How many people have joined the suit?
Well, for me, the latest thing, obviously, is now that I have to catheterize every 4 hours.
Good God.
I'm also 100% wheelchair dependent.
Good God.
I've lost my mobility there, and it's just I take one day at a time. And up until recently, I really haven't talked to anybody else who has been dealing with any sort of ailment, at least where I'm located. There's one individual that I've come across who's also dealing with some issues of his own as well. And then, of course, there are the other individuals, all the other individuals that have come forward to Paul.
Yeah, well, RT reports 71 sailors, many in their 20s, are filing in the lawsuit that your lawyer's heading up. Is that correct, Paul?
More. Hello? Yes, sir.
I'm just thinking about this situation. Any other points?
The situation is this. We've barely scratched the tip of the iceberg. You're so right in your analysis. They sent the Reagan up to Bremerton for a year and a half to try to take out the radiation from a lot of components. They shipped it all over to Hanford to bury it over there. They sent the Reagan back to Coronado. Then when somebody says, hey, you shouldn't have little school kids going on for field trips on the Reagan, there's probably radiation on it, they determine, oh, we'll send it back to Japan and we can cook it some more. So what I would suggest to you is this. Have your listeners consider a study that was done back in 2003. Past exposure to densely ionizing radiation leaves a unique permanent signature in the genome. And that was David J. Brenner you probably know him, out of Columbia University.
Yes.
The Center for Radiological Research. They teamed up with the Russians, and they studied all the people from Chernobyl, and they actually isolate down to the chromosome level what damage was done by radiation as opposed to other environmental hazards that we all confront. So this is going to burst their Fukushima Gate balloon, because once the people in the know step forward and say, no, enough of this BS, this causes unique permanent damage to our genomes. We're talking about survival as a race. Okay? We're talking about survival of the west coast of California and beyond. Just wait until the people up in Malibu have all that radioactive debris land on their shores this year, and the phones ring off the hook at Barbara Boxer's office and, congressmen down here and everyone, oh, what are you going to do about this now?
Well, it really worries me that the establishment could care less about anything but partying all the time with their underage pages. I mean, it is frightening to know the type of weapons these people have, because the honorable folks are the low-level military and police and the general public compared to the people running things. I guess historically we've got a bunch of Caligulas and Neros and on power trips. You know, I empathize with what's going on with you, Lieutenant Steve Simmons, and I hope you get better. I mean, has the VA told you about any treatments that can try to get the radioactive isotopes out of your body, or have those already broken down? I mean, what's your prognosis?
Game. That's what they are, and they got to be compensated. Let me just tell you this, okay, and I'll shut up. Mangano and Sherman, Doctors Joe Mangano, the Nuclear Project, and Jeanette Sherman underscore how small amounts of anthropogenic radiation are lethal and crippling over the short and intermediate term. Human immune systems cannot thrive with permanently damaged thyroid function. You take it from here, Tomodachi.
Well, that's well said. Go ahead.
To answer your question, has the VA mentioned anything about it? In fact, nobody has. Nobody's even, due to the fact that nobody's acknowledged that radiation has had anything to do with my failing health, nobody's even talking about potential treatments or anything of that nature. And, you know, in fact, I've actually had, aside from the intern who gave me his comment about if it was radiation, I would have seen symptoms long before I did, I've actually had no kidding, a doctor say, well, maybe you're better off not knowing what this is. So at what point do I give up all hope with doctors? And, you know, I don't know. I don't know where to go from there.
We have a bunch of insane scum running things. Look at the GMO crops. Look at the fluoride in the water. They are killing us. And overwhelmingly, it's to reduce population. That's their rationalization. But in the final equation, they're just a bunch of mismanaging, bumbling boobs who endanger our entire civilization. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on with us. I want to ask your lawyer, Paul Garner, if he'd like to give out his legal website, or Steve, if you'd like to give out any contact info for yourself or others that might want to talk to you.
Sure. We would invite your listeners or others to contact us at FukushimaRadiationVictims.net. It's spelled FukushimaRadiationVictims.net, and we'll be happy to interact with you. And my personal email is pcg@garnerlaw.com.
All right, well, good job.
NERLAW.com.
Good job, Mr.
Anyway,
Garner.
Thank you, Alex, for shining a spotlight on this, and we'll keep you posted. And I know that I've reached out to Glenn. I want to speak with him about where he was during the 3 years before he got tested, where he lived, and where.
Sure, thank you. We'll do that. And then Steve Simmons, anything else?
Nope. I mean, you know, obviously my big concern is that making sure that answers come and that the young sailors and Marines are all taken care of.
I hear you. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Godspeed. We'll continue to follow your case, because we're all being affected by this in a lesser way, unfortunately. I wish none of us were being affected by it, including yourself. It's you know, my cousin was born with holes in his heart right after my uncle got back from Vietnam. He got married, had a child, and the child died when he was about 1.5 years old. His name was Flint. And they told him that it was Agent Orange. And then, of course, he had a bunch of other children that were fine after that, because they say it precipitates out and affects you for a few years. And, of course, that's on record, but they tried to cover that up for decades. And then, of course, when they looked at my uncle's heart and lungs and stuff, he had a lesion on his heart and things from a heart attack. And they said, we see these, or it's like heart attack-like, in pilots from Vietnam who got a lot of Agent Orange on them. You know, we see this in guys that are even really healthy like him. And that's just an example of how I've had 2 people in my family die or be contributed to Monsanto which owned the Agent Orange. I mean, it's just like you people never stop. I mean, you're assaulting us, but it's done with stuff that kills us decades later, or we have a deformed kid. It's like Fallujah and the Marines have a 5-fold increase in deformed babies. They have a 14 to 18-fold, depending on the year, increase for the Iraqis in Fallujah, a 4-fold increase across Iraq. Belgrade has a 4-fold increase where the U.S. and NATO use DU on civilian targets. I mean, it's crazy. It's like it's space aliens really run the government, and they want to live in a radioactive environment or something. I mean, you try to think of logic. I don't really believe that. I'm saying hypothetically as a way to understand it. I want to believe there's some reason. No, the establishment just doesn't care. While they lecture us all day long about how we got to get rid of our cars because they're going to hurt the earth, and we've got to pay a carbon tax, and we've got to restrict this and restrict that, and oh, you can't wash your car in your own yard because the soap runoff will hurt the... They are obsessed with everything they can tax us on and track us on, but all the real stuff, they're doing it on purpose. They're doing it on purpose, on record, Monsanto, all the big GMO companies, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of being assaulted by you people. I'm tired of it. And exactly what that lawyer is, a good lawyer. All the studies he was mentioning, we've covered. The Pentagon, MIT, all of them, they all know. They wouldn't let them use DU until 1990. They had it in the 50s, stockpiled in Eastern Europe, Western Europe border, in case the 10-to-1 superiority tanks of the Russians came in. They were then going to serve up, once a nuclear war already started, DU as a secret weapon to be fired from high-caliber rifles and small anti-tank artillery that 3-man teams could carry and assemble to take out the tanks. But it was only to be used in just a red-level nuclear war emergency. 10-to-1. Now, the establishment said in 1990, use it. Again, it isn't just about the poisoning. It's about why is the establishment doing this? I mean, look at Steve Jobs, you know, dying young. Look at all this. This is not good. By the way, I'm going to do a plug here and then come back and cover the move to ban cars, have major cities car-free. MSNBC is reporting it like it's wonderful. Edward Snowden tells German TV that NSA is involved in industrial espionage. Ever heard that before? 16 years ago here, I was told by an NSA whistleblower, by another NSA whistleblower, and by at least 3 telecom whistleblowers. Because as more and more of them came to me, I got more and more. And they were smart. Rodeos, car shows. I did a remote at a golf course, and a guy showed up and gave me info. And, I mean, these were all like engineers with the pocket protectors, but good engineers, high-level engineers, you know, getting into their Mercedes and Cadillacs and driving off. And they all told me the same thing. They said it's economic data to predict the future and control the world. And I've been saying that for 16 years. People think I'm crazy. Now it's all being announced. This is a big deal, folks. You can end free will if you can predict the future, because then you can put stimuli in to manipulate, and it gives you a targeting system on the mind with your stimuli to learn how to guide the brain. It's mind control. So don't be mad at the public that are under mind control. Listen, if you're in the Navy or if you were around Fukushima or you're on the West Coast, you're insane if you're not getting the gourmet salts that have the good iodine in them. But that is bound iodine and is still not the proprietary nascent iodine that we sell. And we sell stuff that we use. I discovered this doing research for myself and my family. And I tried a bunch of them and couldn't take them. It gave me stomach aches. I found this brand that no one even knew about, 20-something years, proprietary, National Academy of Sciences, and basically bought them out. Or we're the distributor of it. And it is half the price, double the strength of many leading competitors. It's Survival Shield. We did get a lot more of it in. But quite frankly, it's a small laboratory, and it's completely organic. The corn-based glycerin out of Germany, very hard to get organic corn, but it is amazing. And when you purchase it, it helps fund our operation, InfoWarsLife.com. We've got discounts when you order in bulk. And, of course, it stores well, so you can save it. But this is something I take morning, noon, and night. I personally take double the dose that's recommended. I don't recommend you do that. Talk to your physician. You will go through some detoxing first. But I'm taking my 2nd dose of the day, and it's just done wonders for me. InfoWarsLife.com or 888 253-3139. We have the Super Male Vitality and the Fluoride Shield with the iodine and 5 other key ingredients at InfoWarsLife.com. I mean, you do regular journalism, you get arrested in this country. And this is part of a major pattern of persecution that I predicted would accelerate last Thursday with Bob Barr, hours before the D'Souza thing came out. And there's not a backlash to this. If they get away with it, Katie bar the door. That's how dictators do it. They test. Like a parrot will reach out and put its beak on a perch to see if it'll hold them. And, you know, Senator Cruz, I can't believe, I didn't trust Cruz at first because I didn't really know him. And he just kind of came out of nowhere in Texas government. We interviewed him once. We should probably try to get him on. But the point is that he's totally proven himself to be absolutely incredible. I just admire Senator Cruz so much. Bottom line, he got on Schaefer's show on Face the Nation and said, we have a dangerous power grab by Obama. They're arresting members of the press. This should concern everyone. You got the IRS persecuting people. This is tyranny. Obama's dangerous. And Schaefer laughs at him and then cuts the feed. Well, it went out on the internet. But it did not go out on television. They cut 1 minute and 30 seconds of it. We have that up on Infowars.com right now. Because, listen, they can't allow this out because if it gets out there, they're going to go down. Now, you got the State of the Union tomorrow. You know, I may even do a live broadcast tomorrow when the nightly news ends. What time's the State of the Union tomorrow? 8 o'clock Central? 7 o'clock Central? I think I may pipe it in there and just do a special live report tomorrow. Now, shifting gears here, folks, this is an article out of CNBC, and they're reporting it like, again, it's no big deal. They're just acclimating you. Germany is the most far along with Agenda 21 in the world, from what I've seen. The worst city in the U.S. would be San Francisco, New York, and then Austin for it. And it's official UN treaty where basically all cars will be barred from the city. You've got to use their mass transit as a system of control. But it doesn't mean that then that'll cut back on oil prices. You'll pay even more because it's all about gouging you for more, all about living in a 250-square-foot apartment. That's the global model, not having single-family dwellings. I've got a feminist up on Infowars.com, a news article saying women that have children and are homemakers are disgusting and shameful. You're like, man, that's really hateful. These are not liberals. These are conquerors. They're going to put us out in the barn. You got to break up the family to do that. CNBC, a ban on autos. Major cities consider going carless. Germany, home of high-speed Autobahn, is perhaps one of the few countries that has had an intense love affair with an automobile, as the U.S. But in an effort to go green, the country's second-largest city is studying ways to eliminate cars by 2034. They'll do it a lot quicker than that. The northern city of Hamburg has laid out an initial concept named Green Network Plan that would expand public transport and add more routes for pedestrians and bicyclists. The most controversial aspect of the plan calls for a steady phase-out of automobiles in the center of the city over the next 2 decades. And, folks, this is a hot topic, it says, among urban planners, especially in Europe and other industrialized countries. This is de-industrialization, and that's the plan. So I told you that was coming. And you don't understand, they're not making 250-square-foot apartments available. They're going to raise the taxes where that's all you can have, unless you're making millions of dollars, while they bulldoze Detroit. Unbelievable. We're going to go to break. We've got a bunch of other news coming up, but then James O'Keefe's going to be joining us. Hey, don't you wish this guy would run into a burning house for freedom? Man runs into a burning home to save his Xbox? What a zombie. By the way, I've been talking to news media people and other activists who have been criticizing the TSA, and they say that they're given pre-check passes without even having to go through the TSA more and more. And that's being done to basically have activists back off. And that's an example of how when you complain and you don't submit, you get left alone. But when you submit, the bureaucrats will actually nail you to the wall. And after a decade of criticizing the TSA, the last 4 years intensely since the genital groping began, there's been a revolution of awakening to this on Capitol Hill, you name it. The other problem is, though, they're data mining before you get to the airport, showing that you're not connected to any terrorist. when they try to clamp down on political groups domestically, they could easily then list that as a reason that precludes you from flying, as the IRS proposed last year, a bill not letting you leave the country if the IRS has even opened an investigation on you. Well, everybody's had the IRS open investigations on them if you've ever run a business. This is scary. Prominent anti-TSA activist receives pre-check pass without applying. Agency giving critics a free security theater pass? Question mark. An engineer who notoriously exposed TSA body scanners, yeah, he's been on our show, as fundamentally flawed, has been handed a lifetime pre-check pass, meaning he may never have to walk through a scanner or undergo pat-downs again. Prompting questions. Well, I want one. But see, then that's wrong, folks. The general public, the sheep still go through it. My dad went through back from Europe, and they didn't check him. Prompting questions over whether the agency is attempting to sweeten its staunchest critics. To his surprise, John Corbett, who runs the popular blog TSA Out of Our Pants, let's get him back on, received the pre-check pass on a flight from Nassau to Miami International last week. Corbett, who also became the first person in America to sue the TSA over the constitutionality of the agency. Yeah, see, they don't want him to get more stuff to sue him with. Body scanners and pat-downs did not even apply for a pre-check pass. Of course, I would say the TSA does know he's not a terrorist. I mean, that's for sure. I think the old days you used to be able to dress nice, and it was like fun to fly, and you get on the plane and go places, which will allow him to skip standard security lines and procedures when boarding flights within the United States. That's right. The guy who sues, publicly humiliates, and fights the TSA before Congress now has a TSA pre-check, Corbett writes on his blog. I want to get him on tomorrow if we can, gentlemen. He's a frequent guest of ours. I mean, look. How do you handle a bully? How do you handle a bully? I remember so many times when I was like 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, you name it. The bully would say, I'm going to be waiting for you when you come out of school today. And you know what? I wouldn't try to go out the back of the school and get away from them. I just walked right up the front, and they walked up and got in my face, took them a swing, I'd pop them right in the nose. And then, of course, then their older brother would want to take a swing. And, you know, sometimes I'd go to the hospital. Sometimes they'd, you know, go into the ward for the rest of their life with tubes up their nose. I mean, you know, that's how this works, because I just learned, you want to fight me? Let's go. You know what? You want to get your head slammed in the concrete? Let's go. And I'm telling you, folks, that's what a nation of free people are like. We don't start fights, we finish them. We don't start fights, we finish them. And a nation of sheep will be ruled by a nation of wolves. You understand that? I am not going to sit here and bend over and lick their boots anymore. I'm done. And they're going to try to persecute us. But if they can't make you cower, and if you respond to their bullying by standing up, we will beat these people. And let me tell you, giving into it, they're going to take the pension funds and the bank accounts. I told you, it's already starting. This is what they've done in every other country. That's their plan. And they've got it all in the books now. They say they can legally do it. That's like saying Obama can legally snort cocaine in the White House, Oval Office, as he's known to do. And Bill Clinton can rape women. I mean, I'm just sick of these criminals. These are criminal minds. These are criminals. They have criminal psychology all over them. They're degenerate. We'll be right back. Look at this article from last year that we broke out of the Journal of Bioethics, and then the London Telegraph picked it up. Killing Babies article reveals the truth of abortion, say pro-lifers. Say kill babies up to age 3. Let the state decide. Well, here's a new article that's up on Infowars.com from Truth Revolt today. Feminist blogger, I look down on young women with husbands and kids. Yeah, it's just so horrible to be completely satisfied with great children and a great life. I mean, it's just absolutely. The best time of my life was when I had newborn kids and little kids. I mean, I wish I could go back to when they were really little. This is the sickness that we deal with, ladies and gentlemen. They call themselves tolerant. Every time I turn on the television, they're making fun of, quote, straight people. This isn't tolerance. This is being conquered. You will have your children sexualized at age 5. You will have carbon taxes on you paid to Al Gore. Look at Governor Cuomo last week. Governor Andrew Cuomo says gun-loving pro-lifers not welcome in New York. Right explodes. How about people that are for, quote, tolerance? I thought you're so tolerant. He says that's not how New Yorkers are. You know, we define what New Yorkers are. Really, they had a war in New York with the redcoats over them trying to take the guns, and in Massachusetts. I mean, these people are just incredible gangster thugs. You know how many armed bodyguards that pig has? And the corruption of his family? What a disgusting worm. And then you dovetail it with all this info. Is Barack Obama an imperial president? Christian Science Monitor, they go on to say he needs to be. Oh, we need a Fuhrer. It's happening, folks. Obama's plan to use executive action triggers criticism on legalizing illegals, you name it. On Obamacare, on guns. Obama to assert unilateral agenda, Wall Street Journal. White House warns Obama could go around Congress, AP. Michael Bloomberg, amnesty needed to prevent national suicide. House Republicans to offer broad immigration plan. If it isn't exactly what Obama wants, he'll just do it by executive order. There's not much further they can go once they're this dictatorial. They have the IRS harassing gun groups, harassing pro-life groups, harassing mainline conservative groups and libertarian groups have to be in a 1,500-member strong secret society in L.A. or they'll be fired. James Woods will never work again, he said, because he's been told because he criticized the Lord and Savior, as Jamie Foxx called him. Our Lord and Savior, Barack Obama. Barack Obama. Kicking people off the pre-existing plans, double, tripling the cost. All of this persecution. And then you get the Governor McDonald, who's pled not guilty, who, even if he did the stuff they said, it's questionable. It'd be like an ethics violation. He might have to pay the money back. I know, folks, I've exposed Democratic payoffs in cash, catching it on tape, and there was only an ethics commission meeting, and then the head of the committee was given a written, not official, censure and told not to do it again. I mean, people paid to give fake testimony. Thousands of dollars, caught it on tape. That's how arrogant the Democrats are. They just walk around with suitcases in the Texas Capitol, just piles of hundreds out. I'm like, you're paying him off. So what? What's wrong with that? There's video of that on YouTube, folks. James O'Keefe's with us for the balance of the hour. All you've got now, once you get to this point historically, is the open purge. And Dinesh D'Souza, who came out with a film that isn't like the Ku Klux Klan Democratic Party creating division, race politics, but creating unity around Bill of Rights, Constitution, due process, and private property, something George Soros, who gets most of his money from taxpayer banker bailouts, doesn't like. It's always these big billionaire offshore globalists that are attacking the middle class and new wealth. They're the enemy, folks. They're the Agenda 21 pigs. Now, I gave you this background rant here before we go to James O'Keefe. We sell his book, by the way, which is an absolute primer to understand how to take down the globalist breakthrough. If you want to be a citizen journalist and have international effect, he brought down Akron. You got to say who was the detonator on the bomb that brought down that criminal organization. Now they've been exposing the new front groups where they hire felony groups that disappear millions to be the navigators to get your Social Security numbers. He has been arrested before, and they've tried to charge him for exposing corrupt senators like Landrieu, but he's beaten them. But now they're getting bold, and Cuomo is subpoenaing him. And I wanted to, before we got into his new Battleground Texas stuff, where they openly are registering illegals to vote and saying it, where they're openly teaching them how to commit fraud, where they're openly making fun of people in wheelchairs. I mean, I've been around Democrats, folks. I used to go to pro-life rallies and demonstrations and things when I had the time. And, you know, I've told the stories, and I've had black folks on like Reverend Childress. They'll say, no, the par for the course with black Democrats is, we're going to kill these nappy-head black people. That's the quote. You're like a Democratic Party man. You're like, don't kill the black people. We need to get rid of these black people. More for me. I mean, that's a quote. And you're like, what the? These people are nut jobs. I'm telling you, it's a criminal group. And then you got a bunch of well-meaning liberals who really think the Democrats are the nice guys on social issues who support them. And I'm not saying the Republican leadership's good either, but the virulent cancer is the Democrats. They are a disease. And imagine if Bush had had Michael Moore arrested claiming he gave $20,000 to a political candidate in bundling. Obama's gotten a third of his money from foreign offshore groups completely illegally. Look at this Attorney General, all the crimes he's committed. And folks, if they get away with Dinesh D'Souza and Governor McDonald and with James O'Keefe, you better believe Matt Drudge and Alex Jones and Glenn Beck and Joseph Farah are next. Believe me. Believe me. I don't like to talk about the stuff I've gone through over the years because I don't want to intimidate people for the enemy. But look, they've left me alone because they understand I'll get really aggressive. And I know how to bring these people down. So they're criminal cowards. They operate in big groups, but they're using the Justice Department with the most criminal attorney general in history, undoubtedly, a Fast and Furious, you name it, to literally bring this country down. So I want to get into the incredible new Battleground video he's got up at ProjectVeritas.com. We're going to play the audio and video here for radio listeners / TV listeners. But I wanted to just bring this up to you and get your take on this clear selective enforcement purge, both men saying not guilty, and the fact that they're subpoenaing you and the sharks are now circling you, buddy.
Yeah, Alex, this is something I've had to contend with for a couple of years. You know, they're targeting journalists in this country, and they've been targeting. We've spoken before about how I've been subpoenaed, I've been audited. Last year, I was audited by the IRS. I have a small charity. We have an office in Westchester, New York, and now Governor Cuomo issued a subpoena to us yesterday, where they're talking about commanding me to appear and give every single financial transaction over the last 3 years of an organization that makes less than $1 million a year. They're demanding general ledgers, journals, cash books, and payroll records and everything else. And because I'm a journalist and I have undercover journalists working for me, you know, the state of New York has a history of leaking people's information to the press.
Oh, yeah, they publish concealed permit holders' names in the paper.
They did that. There was also an incident that happened with the tax office a couple of years ago where they leaked information to the press. 5 New York State Department of Taxation and Finance employees say their tax returns were unlawfully audited and leaked to the New York Post. In Louisiana, my information was leaked to the press. The U.S. attorneys resigned in disgrace. This is all public information. But when I'm afraid of they're obviously targeting me. It's obviously political. And, you know, they're subpoenaing me. And I think it's a disgrace, not just that they're doing it, but the journalists in this country don't care. They're not interested in reporting.
Well, in fact, not that they just don't care and have no instinct for freedom. They are now slating others, making fun of us, worried about D'Souza, and making jokes about you and I. We're being attacked for being real journalists on the cutting edge of liberty. I mean, if they arrested Michael Moore like this, I wouldn't put up with it.
No, it's unbelievable. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, it's D'Souza. They're indicting D'Souza. They're indicting McDonald. And for me, it's not even an indictment, but there is no concern from the Columbia Journalism Review or the New York Times. They like the fact that people are being targeted by the government. They like that because it's people that they don't agree with. And I think it's gotten really bad. It's going to get worse. And I think it's not just going to be something against me. It's going to affect a lot more people, as you pointed out. Pretty soon they're going to be going after people like Glenn Beck. They're going to be going after those types. They think they can come after me because I'm small and because I have a small charity and I'm tax exempt. But sooner or later, they're going to come after big people, too.
And by the way, you've been thrown in jail before exposing their shenanigans.
Yeah, they actually, a federal judge, a judge named Stanley Duvall in Louisiana for the Fifth Circuit, was the federal judge. He called me, basically insinuated that I was a terrorist for walking into a federal building with a camera. That's why I was a terrorist. And then the magistrate judge destroyed the videotape that I took from inside that federal building. And the press just went along for the ride. And this is what I write about in Breakthrough. It's this crazy story about everything that has happened to me. And like you pointed out, Alex, I walk a fine line because on one hand, I want to tell Americans sort of what I've been through. On the other hand, I don't want to scare them because this stuff is really, really scary, but it's also very true.
Well, let me tell you, if you don't know there's a tyranny, folks, go out and fight it and you'll find out real quick. Now, usually they end up running from you in fear, but if you get really effective, I mean, how many billions did their crime machine lose when you brought down Akron?
Well, they were allocated to receive as much as $5 billion in the stimulus package. Funny thing is, this guy Wade Rathke, who was behind Acorn, because of our Battleground Texas story that we released last week, Rathke said to the Austin Statesman on the front page on Sunday, he said, We've been having weekly meetings. We've been instructing people how to possibly get around O'Keefe and handle O'Keefe's undercover people. So they're
that's right. That's right. You have the entire Democratic machine on the run. You and about 20 other people. We'll be right back. Miller's List producer who was producing the new film with D'Souza says he's never feared his government until now. That's what he told Newsmax. This is serious, folks. This is serious. And we're going back to James O'Keefe of Project Veritas. You got cut off there. But, yeah, the Democrats are openly in the paper bragging about how they're going around with Battleground Texas, telling them what to say and what not to say. And for those that don't know, we're going to play a 2-minute clip of Wendy Davis, the abortion queen, and all the rest of it. But please continue.
So I'm just saying that, the impact, the bad news is they're going to come after us. They're going to put us in jail. And they're going to indict us, intimidate us, and most importantly, deter people from recruiting. I recruit citizen journalists. We have dozens of people across the country. They want to stop my volunteers from getting involved because they want to make an example out of me. So the good news is that front page of the Austin Statesman yesterday, there's an article saying James O'Keefe targets Battleground Texas. And you have Wade Rathke, who founded Acorn and now represents Local 100 there in Texas, saying that he's having weekly meetings with his organizers, putting out instructions on how to identify possible O'Keefe associates and reporters in their offices. So they're on the lookout for us. In fact, one quote from this article, this is on the front page of the Austin Statesman, says that Battleground Texas has sought to keep 10,000 volunteers from saying or doing anything fraudulent that might play into my hands. That's a direct quote. So these people are on the lookout for our undercover cameras. That's how you know we're making an impact.
And by the way, it's not playing into someone's hands when you go into Acorn office after Acorn office and say, here's my underage prostitute. I'm going to ship in child prostitutes, and I want the Democrats to help me run the scam. Oh, yes. In my experience, street-level Democrats are hoods, thugs, scammers. They're allowed to engage in every crime, every welfare crime you can imagine. But if a libertarian or a patriot has a literal crooked toenail, we go to jail. The way these laws are written, it is almost impossible to follow all the stinking laws, the way they can interpret them. This is so huge. But then, look, you are the answer. I've been doing this 18 years. You've been doing this, I don't know, 6, 7 years. If people will emulate what you put in your book, Breakthrough, which is available on InfoWarsStore.com, if they will take that and do that in their area on issues and use YouTube and other platforms, the system is sensationally corrupt. And if we just go point cameras at them and ask them questions, they will expose themselves. All that evil men and tyrants need to flourish is that good men do nothing. Tell folks about Wendy Davis and some of the other big stuff you've got breaking, James O'Keefe.
So, yeah, in the past week, there was a whole bunch of scandal in Texas about some comments directed at the attorney general there regarding, I guess he's in a wheelchair, therefore people are making comments about how he can't stand with Wendy, et cetera, et cetera. So we have all this material on Battleground. Battleground Texas is a political action committee in the state of Texas that raises tens of millions of dollars from national Democratic money to try to flip Texas into a Democratic state. They're doing that by dispatching roughly 10,000 people in the state to register voters and sometimes commit fraud. So we caught some of their volunteers on tape disparaging disabled people, talking about how Greg Abbott is in a wheelchair. We want to stand with Wendy. First of all, he's in a wheelchair, and they're making all these comments about disabled people in this video, and it's actually put Wendy Davis on defense. She had to comment on Friday that these comments were abhorrent, and like you said, we don't need to advocate anything here. We're not picking sides. What we are doing is exposing the reality of who these people are, how they think, and how they view people in the state of Texas.
You're absolutely right, but the fact that they're coming after us. And the Republican leadership's trying to purge the Tea Party out of their ranks and trying to purge Ted Cruz and people shows that we're gaining ground and that we can win if we just continue to fight.
I think we have to expose reality. I mean, it's amazing how much we accomplish at Project Veritas. All we do is catch things on tape. And I think if we just did this more often, if we got all of them on tape, it would pretty much stop all the fraud. It's certainly deterring the fraud. They're admitting in this article here that they're on the lookout for undercover reporters. They're stopping the fraud. And I debated not releasing this video last week. I thought about waiting, but because it was in the news and because I wanted to stop the fraud before it happened. At the end of this video, if you look at the end of our YouTube video, There's a clip where one of the deputy voter registrars, her name is Lisa Wortham. She's an attorney in Dallas, and she is an official in Texas. You have to be officially deputized to register voters. And she says that she sees mail-in voter fraud happen all the time. She covers her ears when it's discussed in the meeting. And another one says, hey, that's illegal, but I never even heard you say that. This is on videotape.
We're going to play that when we come back. And then it's them playing into your hands when they're the ones doing it.
That's right.
That's like if you see some guy, you know, beating his wife with a tire iron next door and you call the cops and they go, yeah, he was beating his wife. He played into O'Keefe's hands. And again, the Democratic Party was the party of the Ku Klux Klan. This is on record. They couldn't beat the Republicans in Eisenhower with the Civil Rights Act. They literally flipped back then to race politics with, quote, minorities and still the Old South as a strategic operation. And they've taken over, and they invoke racism. The public has no idea Martin Luther King was a Republican. They have no idea the NRA was founded to give blacks guns who were newly freed. They get on the news and say it is part of the Klan. And again, the Republican Party's been taken over by the globalists. They're afraid of the Tea Party taking it back. But the Democrats, look, do you like Obama ripping you off and conning you? We're going back to James O'Keefe to play this clip and get some final comments from him. But look at drudgereport.com right now. It's got a link there in the middle. Christian singer walks out after satanic performance. You click on that. It's a Infowars.com article. Christian singer walks out on Grammys after satanic performances. I watched some of these before the show today, and it was literal Satan worship, fire, death. Look at my Twitter account. He's got a still image of, like, just incredibly horrible stuff. Other singers were there, wallowing around and doing sex rituals, and then having gay people being married on TV. This is what happened when Rome was about to collapse. And they go, what, you don't like gay people? Look, no, I don't even think about stuff like that. That's not what it's about. It's about the mental illness of the ruling class that are into corruption, into bad things. Before we get back into Wendy Davis and other big stories you're working on, James O'Keefe, literally the model of resistance, small guerrilla teams of journalists just going out and exposing the incredible corruption. Let me ask you this question. Who do you think the Democrats really are, and what is their end game? And how can they be stopped? Or are they just too criminally powerful and too cunningly evil to be stopped?
Well, we've demonstrated with our reporting about the impact that we can have. I just said to you before the break, the front page Austin Statesman is reporting that Wade Rathke, the founder of Acorn, who's also managing the local 100 chapters there throughout Texas, he's actually spending the majority of his time training his people how to avoid being caught on my cameras, which is unbelievable. It's remarkable how much of an impact our little nonprofit is having compared to, say, the Republican Party or the political action committees across the country. I mean, we are quite literally putting them in a state of fear and paralysis. The Texas Tribune today has an article. It's called "Inside the O'Keefe Battleground Texas War." I mean, I'm just one citizen with a couple reporters with cameras, and I'm going against an organization with 10,000 volunteers.
You are tonight literally taking the field against these scum, and that's what's so frustrating. If people would just do what you do and what I've done and just go out there and engage them, it is so easy.
People are very afraid, Alex, and the number one thing that I've discovered is that people are hopeless and afraid. And these are good, God-fearing, patriotic Americans come up to me, and they're so scared of what might happen to them. And my message to them is, look, I mean, yes, you're going to have to make some type of personal sacrifice. You're going to have to put yourself on the line. But my message is you can break through it. I mean, you can succeed. You can make an impact. You can survive their attacks. I think we just need to come together. And you asked me what, can they be stopped? I mean, I think reality is going to stop them. I think the truth is going to, I have faith in people. If they're given facts about the country they live in, they're going to make the right decisions. The problem is people are not educated because they don't really know what's going on.
No, I totally agree with you. And Hollywood is putting out the psychological bilge as a disabling mental virus, because if you are virtuous, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but somewhat virtuous, you don't like corruption, you don't like thugs, you don't like bullies, you don't like fraud, you're discerning, reality rules your life, and you just absolutely will reject the collectivist dependency squalor that these people create. And that's why they're trying to sexualize 5-year-olds. That's why they're having satanic rituals at the Super Bowl and at the Grammys. That's why they're doing this, is to screw us up. Now, shifting gears back into this clip, we're going to play this 2-minute clip that you were just mentioning that's up on your website if folks want to watch the whole thing, projectveritas.com, that again has them on the defense. And now in Battleground, Texas, Soviet town, Texas, they're unable to engage in their normal kleptocratic activities because you've gotten them off balance. Now they're unable to carry out their normal Chicago Mafia takeover.
That's exactly right. They're deterred from doing the type of thing. I mean, and the direct quote here is that they were talking about how, quote, Battleground has sought to keep 10,000 volunteers from saying or doing anything that might play into our hands. As you pointed out, that's a strange way of putting it. It's like, hey, you can commit the fraud, but just don't get caught committing the fraud. And that's exactly, well, from my opinion, that's fine. I mean, if they don't want to get caught committing the fraud, it means they're not going to be able to commit any fraud.
Meanwhile, I've studied campaign finance. I ran for the State House for 2 weeks until the lawyers explained there's no way to follow the law perfectly. And the establishment fat cats can do whatever they want. That's one way they control Congress. But if you ever get off the reservation, they will indict you. And it just comes down to this. We fight fair. While they're registering illegals, while they're getting foreign donors, Dinesh D'Souza is facing years in jail for bundling something that's questionable, if it even is illegal. Same thing with the governor. They're acting like, I'm not even a fan of Chris Christie, but they're acting like this bridge thing is bigger than Watergate, when meanwhile we've got Benghazi and we've got Fast and Furious and Salandra and all this stuff. I mean, it's incredible. What do you make, and then I want to play this clip, of Obama openly acting like a dictator now?
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, it's disgusting. I have 2 points. Number one, I think our war is not just against these government institutions, these attorney generals and the White House. It's also against the journalists who support them. Because if you're any self-respecting, dignified human being and a journalist, you would be outraged. You would drop everything you're doing to protect your profession. And these journalists are disgusting. They're a disgrace. I'm being targeted by the state of New York right now, and this New York State thing. I mean, Elliot Broidy got a slap on the wrist for stealing $250 million in New York State pension funds. They're coming after my less than $1 million C3 charity and auditing every statement going back 3 years. I don't have any words to describe it. And I have been through situations where I have been put in federal prison. I'm a journalist. And I was put in federal prison for being present in a federal building with a camera. And unless we can get our media institutions to be outraged, unless we can somehow provoke the press and get some type of ink nationally, we're in trouble. And that's when I'm trying to outrage people here. That's why I use the tactics that I use.
Sure. Well, Michael Hastings, before he died, said, look, Obama is evil, worse than Bush. We've got to organize the press together. They're waging war on us. We've got to wage war on them. They are so scared of the moral authority, forget left, right, it's right and wrong, coming together and defending the First Amendment. I mean, look how they're arresting journalists in China or in Russia. I'm against that. Now it's happening here, and the Democrat sites are laughing at us, and the commenters are like, good, we're going to arrest you all. And it's like, these people, I guarantee you, are wimps, number one. I mean, they've never sat there and really arrested somebody. They've never falsely charged someone, most of these people. They've never probably been in like a serious situation. And they're sitting back playing the part of like Gestapo gangsters, literally not understanding they're destroying their own future.
Well, I think the way to do it is not talk about policy or economics. These people don't care about that type of thing because they're fascists. So the way to do it is to talk about, do you know what it feels like? This is what I say to people on the left. I said, do you know what it feels like to have a federal judge destroy your evidence? To have the attorney general come after your journalists and try to leak that information to the press in New York? Do you know what it feels like to be in a wheelchair and be called a cripple? Because that's what these people are saying. And I think if you take it from that perspective, the emotions, and if you connect with people like this Wendy Davis clip where she makes fun of handicapped people, that's how we can cross over. And I think that's the way to go, not to talk about tax policy and and the like, but to appeal to people's emotions.
I agree, and their common sense and their sense of morality. I saw a quote, was it yesterday or today? Was it the U.S. attorney or state attorney saying horrible things about you? What was that quote?
Well, the attorney general of New York, Andrew Cuomo, is issuing me a subpoena, but I've dealt with so many of the attorney generals, I lose track. Which did you see? I
just saw the quote. It was calling you a bunch of names and stuff. It was totally prejudicing themselves. I think it was the attorney general in New York.
Yeah, Cuomo and his Department of Labor is going after me, and we use undercover reporters. They want the names of the people, and I'm happy to comply with any audit. I went through an audit last year with the IRS. I was found to be completely compliant. But you know how these people are. They can manufacture scandal by just creating obfuscation about your finances. So I'm doing the best I can. But
well, I mean, here's the deal. They're trying to not let libertarian constitutionalists, real conservatives organize and raise money. And they always demonize me because I sell products to fund ourselves. How do people think this goes? You know, George Soros is spending billions to try to overthrow Eastern Europe. I mean, look at the Ukraine right now. George Soros is trying to fund, groups to destabilize this country because they know we're on the edge of revolution. They want to make it a commie revolution. We have got to stand behind Project Veritas. People have got to get your book, Breakthrough. They've got to emulate what you've done, even if it's going to city council and asking questions, starting a blog. You never know, folks, as millions of us start targeting them as real press, we will fill the vacuum that the dinosaur media hasn't filled. And James, look at the dinosaur media already dying. MSNBC lost half its viewers 2 years ago. They lost half of their viewers again. Soon they'll have no viewers. So really, they are becoming extinct. And I think their offensive attacks and their attempt to get everything done now is a desperate attempt by the establishment.
No, there was a time, Alex, when people would view someone like me and say, well, he's being subpoenaed, indicted. He must be some type of crazy. But in fact, now 90% of people actually can read between the lines and realize that it's almost all political at this point. Anytime someone gets indicted who's in politics, it's almost always a political. We live in I'm an enemy of the state. We live in strange times where they're using political prosecution. I am not exaggerating. It's a politically motivated prosecution process now, where people who they disagree with, journalists they don't like, they try to put them in jail.
They're trying to put a top Fox News reporter in jail because he talked to one of the State Department people on record about North Korea and is North Korea really capable of launching an attack? That's what a journalist is supposed to do.
But that's why the debate about what is journalism and who is a journalist is central. Just like with the abortion debate, what is a human life or when does it begin? That's all central.
But you heard Dianne Feinstein. She will judge who a journalist is now if she gets her bill passed, and they'll strip everyone else. Let's play this clip, get a final comment on anything else, and then let you go. I know you've got stuff to do. Project Veritas, James O'Keefe. Here is the latest video making national news with the globalist tart, Wendy Davis, the abortion queen, making jokes about the Attorney General, who, by the way, is fighting carbon taxes, fighting the shutdown of our power plants, fighting Agenda 21. I know people that know him personally. He's a really good guy, and that's why they hate him. Here it is. We're supporters of Obama, and that doesn't mean support even Romney. That's how it's rigged. They've all been conned by Obama. He's lied to them on every front, and they still don't care. And you look in their eyes, they are the dumbest, stupidest people. But then they're always led by these weak but also evil control freaks that really do want to take over society. James O'Keefe, any other comments about the work you've got going on or things that are happening in the news and the next shoe to drop?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely, I put on Facebook because Cuomo was issuing me a subpoena. I said, well, first of all, I'm leaving New York. I have an office in New York. I'm going to leave New York. And I'll follow Hannity's lead because he said he's leaving New York too. I'll leave New York and I'll move to a different state, and then I'll launch an investigation into Cuomo's office. That's one of the things I'm going to do. I'm going to investigate Andrew Cuomo in New York State. In terms of Battleground Texas, we have about 100, 200 hours of raw footage that we're cutting down. Jeremy Bird, President Obama's national field director, said, quote, O'Keefe should get 0 ink in any respectable newspaper. So I'm telling Jeremy Bird on Twitter right now, we have Jeremy Bird on tape. We have him on tape. Obama's national field director. We also have a number of other Battleground people on tape committing voter fraud. So we'll be releasing those videos one at a time and forcing the media to talk about what we expose.
Oh, so that's breaking. You've got more on these guys.
Yes, yes. We even have Jeremy Bird himself on videotape. We have many people in Battleground, Texas on tape, and we're going to be releasing those one at a time over the coming 10 months.
Well, years ago when I was involved in Republican Party stuff with Pat Buchanan and then libertarians, we talk about how to convince people that our ideology is better. We don't talk about fraud and scams and underage hookers. And it's crazy when I've gone to Democratic meetings and covered them. It's basically always a circus. These people are freaks.
They're freaks, and the one thing that we got to do is just expose the fact that they are freaks. You know, it's jujitsu, Alex. You take their strength, you turn it into a weakness.
All right, James O'Keefe, you're a hero. Just keep it up. A lot of courage, folks. Stand with him, support him, and stand with the Attorney General of Texas, Abbott, who's running for governor. He is a great gubernatorial choice. So is Jerry Patterson over somebody like Wendy, the butcher of baby. It's incredible. We'll be right back. Crazy. And then now the Wall Street Journal, the new fiscal showdown builds over new debt limit. They're going to go up to like 19, 20 trillion, 21 trillion, 25 trillion, 30 trillion. The average person born the year Obama was elected 6 years ago owes $1.3 million, according to the Congressional Budget Office last week. And if you just don't even, if you want to cut the increase in the budget, they scream racist and run around. I mean, and then when everything goes bankrupt, it'll be our fault that weren't for it, of course. I mean, it's easy to run things if you want to wreck things. It's simply incredible. And then you've got HSBC and Lloyd's of London and others halting, getting money out of the bank. Just so much crazy stuff going. Manipulation of the stock markets. The globalists control unlimited fiat currency through derivatives and other manipulations. Before they would just do, for every dollar in the bank or every pound in the bank, you could loan out 10. And the globalists took over the world with that. Now it's just unlimited. So they don't care if they shut everything down. In fact, they want to do that. And if people start valuing a good economy again and start thinking of themselves as empowered individuals that are actually affecting the system and not just jellyfish that just receive propaganda, we will turn the tide. Who are the globalists upset with? Who is the Atlantic Council and the CFR upset with? Empowered anti-globalist individuals. Empowered individuals. They're scared of people that want justice. Hey, Warren Buffett, you're not tax exempt, and then lobby for my taxes to go up when you're the biggest recipient of it. Hey, UN, you don't get the diplomatic immunity to commit crimes. Don't you get it? They're all exempt from what they do to us. That is the ultimate form of discrimination. But, oh, they're busy like, oh, gay, oh, black, to try to divert off into the stuff that's a non-issue now. It's a non-issue. Because they don't want to discuss the other issues. The Ku Klux Klan lost in the 60s, so they flipped the script. And that's why you look at MSNBC, it sounds like a Klan rally. But it's against white people and gun ownership and libertarianism. It's sick. Big city politics where they divide the cities up and play groups off against each other. That's what they base the society off of. Look at this article out of CNET News. Man runs into burning home to save his Xbox. A Kansas man cannot bear the idea of being without his favorite gaming device, so he risked his life to save the Xbox, ABC 15 reported. Could have been killed, ran into it in front of witnesses, and it's just amazing. But they'll probably say he's a hero on the news or something, but if he'd have run in for his child, well, he'd have been tasered. Like happened a month or so ago, the guy ran in to get his child, and firefighters told the police, no, he shouldn't go in there. So they tasered him. You know, how about you just let him go in? Oh, you couldn't stop him. He wants to risk his life, let him do it. No. There's only one thing that's illegal in this world now. That's being honorable, standing up to bullies. In England, if you fight back against a mugger, they will put you in prison for decades. The muggers get nothing. When gypsies steal people's motorhomes, travel trailers, they get to keep them. And it's politically incorrect to not say, no, gypsies deserve your motorhome. Understand that? Because it's a criminal government, ladies and gentlemen. And they don't want you to be able to stand up. So being a man is the ultimate crime. Being a good woman's being the ultimate crime. Being honorable is the ultimate crime. Running into a burning building to save your child is a crime in America. Going in to get an Xbox, you'll probably get a Purple Heart like drone pilots. I'm out of time. Back tonight, 7 o'clock with InfoWars Nightly News. Lord willing, back tomorrow. Support us. Spread the word about the transmission. We can win together. Pray for us. We'll pray for you. Retransmission starts now.
Visit GCN Live.